All right, guys, good morning. Today is interview day. Today we have Nick over at Haltech. He is the guy that actually has been helping me along this entire time. You guys know my wife's build where we did this awesome, automatic Supra turbo build. Just, in my opinion, it's very unique with an ECU that controls it all, right? Actually, we call it more of a VCU, right? It's a vehicle control unit because it does the transmission, it is the PDM, and it's the engine control unit. It does it all, right? It is all-encompassing. Nick here today is part of the tech team. He does a little bit of everything himself too. So I'm going to kind of shut up now. I'm going to turn it over to Nick here and have Nick introduce himself and kind of give a rundown of how he got to Haltech, what he does at Haltech exactly, and give a little rundown of the business.
Hey, my name is Nick from Haltech. I work in the Lexington, Kentucky office here in the States. I do sales and technical support, like Ryan kind of mentioned a second ago. And yeah, I've been here for maybe 3 years or so. I worked at a performance shop before this, and then worked at a couple high-end dealerships like Porsche and Audi before that. But yeah, I do tech support. I help Ryan with pretty much anything he needs whenever he messages me at random hours of the night.
Yeah, so Nick has been helping me for quite some time here. Goodness, I mean, it's been, oh my God, it's been going on over a year now that Nick helped me for the very first time getting this ECU set up. As you guys know, I run a Nexus R5 in my wife's car, and I'm going to be running the new Nexus R5 also in my personal Supra, eliminating the fuse box and doing a bunch of neat stuff. But before we just get into specific products, I kind of want to talk about Haltech in itself, because I don't think people realize how long Haltech's been around and how big of a company they are. Here in the US, you guys are really starting to make your mark, and I should just say starting, but you guys have really made your mark here, and it's a great business model. I kind of want people to understand like how long you guys have been around and like how long you've actually been in the ECU game.
So funny enough, we've been around since 1986. That's when the first Haltech ECU was ever made. And Haltech's big claim to fame back then was live tuning. So in 1986, all the tuning you did back then was basically flash based. So you'd make changes, you'd have to turn the car off, write the changes to the ECU, turn the car back on, and then see what your changes did. You could not make changes in real time. So back then, Haltech being able to do that, where you could make a change and it was instantaneous, was a huge thing. So that was kind of how we got started in the ECU game. And we've been making ECUs ever since. We started with just our main office in Australia. Now we have obviously the office here in Lexington, Kentucky. We have an office in California. We have an office in the Philippines. We have an office in New Zealand. We have an office in England or the UK, as well as Austria. So we've got offices almost all over the world now. And we've been doing it for a little over 35 years. So not new to the game by any means.
No, not at all. And actually, this is kind of slightly getting off subject here, but I want that to resonate with everyone, what he just said. You hear all those offices have some type of support then too. So my biggest thing that I have learned over the last year or so is almost 24-hour support, right? The biggest thing is if I can't get a hold of Nick, who is in Kentucky, right? And you guys are about 8 to 5, right? Is your normal Eastern Standard Time hours. But if I can't get a hold of them from 8 to 5, anywhere else would be like, well, I'll just have to wait till tomorrow. Not with Haltech. With them, the California office then picks up. And that gives me till about 8 or 9 o'clock then, right?
Yep, that's about right. They're open until 5 p.m. their time, which ends up being around 8 o'clock here. And the nifty thing about that is when it's 8 o'clock here in Eastern Standard Time, it's actually like 9 or 10 a.m. over in Australia, depending on their time zone, because their time zone changes. They have a weird daylight savings thing over there. So basically, I leave at 5. You can talk to California until 8, and then around 8, Australia's open, but it's the next day. So it's 8 or 9 o'clock here in the States, but it's 9 a.m. over in Australia. So you can actually talk to somebody Monday through Friday until almost 3 in the morning. Which is pretty crazy for if you need a question and you just dial one number. You don't have to worry about like extensions or area codes trying to dial out of the United States, because all that stuff's a hassle. You dial one number and it rings to any office that is open at that point in time. Like around 5 o'clock here, we get calls from Australia because people call Australia. They're not open yet, because it's 6 or 7 a.m. but some shops are. And so I talk to Australians from usually 4 to 5 almost every day. And then like first thing in the morning, I'll get calls from people over in the UK, and it's midday over there, but it's 8 a.m. here. If that office is busy and not answering the phone, it'll basically ring through to any office that is.
Which is, again, using some other ECUs or any other, electronics or any really manufacturer for the most part, right? You have that set window, and once you're past that window, it's like, well, I just have to wait the next day, so on and so forth. With you guys, it's that support is a big deal to me, and that's something I wanted to really pinpoint today and say, you're not just buying the box, right? It is a great tuning, has great tuning capabilities. It's a great ECU. It has everything you could want and then some. And there's multiple types out there that you guys sell, but it's the support that comes with it. And someone like myself, who is definitely more DIY, how long have we talked on the phone? And I try to preface this in the fact that people say, well, Ryan, Haltech works closely with you. They do, right? I work with you very closely, but I'm not special. You would do this for anyone, right, Nick? I mean, I am not special in the fact that if, you need 30 minutes, you need an hour of time to try and figure something out in the car, you're there as tech support to try and help those people.
Yeah, that's correct. You can ask my wife. She will verify that I am on my phone or on my laptop or remoted in with somebody multiple times a day, even once I leave the office. Unfortunately, this job is not 8 to 5. You start working with people, and yeah, they do have the ability to call in and talk to other offices. But a lot of people, once they start working with someone, they like to continue to work with that person. They don't have to explain their situation or go over what they want to happen or what they want their ECU to do or what their problem is. They can just talk to the same person. So I get messages literally 2:30 in the morning sometimes. My phone will go off, and it's somebody from somewhere else in the world that wants help or wants assistance with something. And we do the best that we can. I do like spending time with my family, but my wife's kind of understood at this point that it's not an 8 to 5 job. You help people constantly, and that is, like where Ryan said, a big part of the ECU. Like our ECU does a lot, but there are a lot of other good ECUs on the market, and really the support, I think, is what makes our ECU different. When you need something, you don't have to, post on a Facebook group and deal with 50 bad answers and one good answer and not know how to tell the difference between the two. You can email in or pick up a phone and call. It's that easy. And a lot of people, they don't appreciate that until they get to experience it, I feel like.
So guys, another neat feature that I had never seen before, so we'll just kind of say it here. So I've used AEM for many, many years. And when someone needed to log into my computer and someone needed to look at it, I had to use TeamViewer or a secondary source for that person to then log into my computer and take a look at it. Also, though, when you use TeamViewer, they have full access of your computer, right? So they can see everything. Not saying that is horrible in some ways, but they have full access to your computer. You're also using a secondary program. There is that extra lag. But with Haltech, they can actually get into your computer through the help function of the drop-down menu. So you can go to help, request someone to log in, you give them the code, and they're able to access your ECU and help you along. And it's almost instantaneous. So there's no real lag as long as you have good internet connection, which I had horrible for a long time. Sorry, Nick. And it's now been fixed on my end, but that fact that you guys can get in without a secondary source, I don't have to get something else, especially for, again, the DIY guy who's like, what's TeamViewer? What's this? It simplifies it again to make it even easier for the end user. And I really like that. And maybe you can speak on that too, Nick.
So that function is awesome. It's Haltech Remote Help is what we call it. It used to be part of our website where the other person, you would have to go to the Haltech website, click help, and then click remote help. And then it would open up a different page, and I could make a session and, name it whatever your car is or whatever your name is. And then you could join it. But they've even made it easier than that, because you would be amazed by the amount of people who don't know how to download a file on a computer and then open the file and then run the file. And so even connecting with people would be 20, 30 minutes sometimes. So now the new function, it's part of the ECU software. You go up top, you hit help, you hit remote help, you actually make the session. So there's no you having to download a file, you having to allow it to make changes to your computer, all that normal stuff like you do when you download stuff. You make the file. And then on my end, it pops up and I can join your session. So it makes it a lot more user-friendly, especially for people who are not very well versed, I guess, with technology, which a lot of our customers are, people who, maybe they're even retired. I've dealt with a lot of retired guys who have been in cars their whole lives, but never messed with engine management and kind of want to learn it now that they have a lot of free time. And these guys have a hard time turning on a computer, let alone using an engine management system. So just that little extra step makes it that much easier to be able to help somebody when needed.
Yep. And I just want to preface this, but I also want to say this, working with other ECU manufacturers, you either, one, they will not log into your computer, period. They don't take that on. They won't do it, period, end of story. Number two, if they do it, they are charging a hefty amount of money. I want to make sure it's clear here. For that service or to get that capability within reason, right? We're not saying that you tune a vehicle, but to log in and take a look at some things, that is a free service or included with that ECU. Is that correct, Nick?
That is free. I do take payment in tacos, though, if anybody wants to, send some tacos my way. But yes, that is 100% free. We do that as just part of our tech support. That encompasses first starts. So if you have questions on how to set up my ECU, how to set up the base map, or if you don't have a base map, I will build you one. I worked with a C6 Corvette a couple days ago using a non-Haltech patch harness, and I helped this guy build a base map, get the car running, go through all of his regular setup, enough where he could drive this thing, make sure that there's no leaks, everything's happy, and then he's going to take it to his local tuner so they can get it dialed in. We don't remote tune. There's a lot that goes into that, and so we try to stay away from it because there's too many variables to do it as a company. But even if you wanted to know, like, hey, my car runs and drives, but I want to learn how to set up traction control. What methods would you use? What things have you learned from experience in the industry that work well, that don't work well? Even stuff like that. You can call in. I can go over, how I would recommend to do it, and then you can bounce ideas off of me and say, well, I read online that this is the way to do it, or this engine management does it this way, and I want to recreate that, or whatever you want to do. We're here for you. Whatever you need, we can help with. It's not just setting up a base map and send you down the road. I spend most of my time talking to experienced tuners who have been doing this for years, that maybe there's a new function that they're not aware of, or they want to, learn how to use the ECU a little bit better than what they know how to use it as. So it's not just entry-level people. I talk to people who have been tuning for, longer than I've been doing it, that still have questions on how this stuff works and what they can and can't do and how certain functions can be used and can't be used. So it's really a catch-all for whatever you need. You can call and we can remote in and try to assist you with it. So
I really liked how you said that they're about experienced people, and I can kind of talk on this again, coming from my background, which is more program development and the software side of doing CAD programs. When I hear someone say about a tuner, well, they should know everything about this. They've been doing it for 20 years. And I'm like, I've been doing my job for 12, 14 years now, day in, day out. That's, 5 days a week. And there's still stuff I'm learning every day. Like, these programs are huge, and there's little things that get updated. How many updates you guys do in a year? Our program, we put out 7, 8 updates a year. And if you don't check every little thing every time it comes out, you're going to miss something. So to have that support is a big deal. And I think that in itself is pretty great. All right, guys. So next up here, I wanted to talk to Nick about what Haltech is, the engine control units, right? That's how they really started out. They do more than that now too, but let's kind of get into the Elite here. Let's talk about the dash you guys have. We have that IC7, beautiful dash. We also have the R5, and we have some other cool components I want to talk about, but let's start with the Elite here first, Nick, and we'll just trickle into those other items.
Okay, so the Elite ECU has been out for, almost 10 years now. A lot of people think that it's this new ECU that's kind of fresh, but it's been around for a long time. It seems really new because we do a lot of firmware updates. I think we kind of touched on this earlier, but we do free firmware updates where we go through and add new features and functions, or if a customer wants something that doesn't exist currently, we'll add it. And we still do this with 10-year-old ECUs. So even if you have one of these ECUs from years ago, you're basically still able to use all the features and functions that are current and new as of today. Like recently, the Elite's got the E-Gate. They control it through a DCMD driver due to the motor design of the E-Gate, but that kind of just goes to show we took an old product and taught it new tricks. A lot of manufacturers would just say, you gotta buy the newest, nicest thing, which we do have a new nice ECU called the Nexus R5, but we didn't leave all of our Elite customers behind when we came out with that new ECU. So the Elite line's been around for a long time. It's tried, it's true, but it is 10 years old.
Can I say something there real quick when you said that? Because again, I want to make sure people understand, the product's out. But a prime example is that the whole reason I really was looking at Haltech was for transmission control, right? That's why I came to you guys. I needed true transmission control. Yeah, I know you can use a stock trans controller, but I wanted full functionality. I wanted to try paddle shifters. If you have an Elite, guys, it has that same functionality. Now, you're limited by the amount of inputs and outputs versus what, say, a Nexus has, and also the PDM feature. But you could still have A340 trans control or other transmissions, not just for the Supra. That's in that box. So when that rolled out for the Nexus R5, that also rolled out for the Elite. That doesn't happen. I don't know anyone else that does that. Like with an AEM, no, that doesn't happen. They would never put the new functionalities that put into the Infinity back into, say, like a V2. That would never happen. So for you guys to do that for customers that, say, bought an ECU 10 years ago, that is, from a customer standpoint, insane and makes me want to buy the product that much more, because it shows that, hey, we care about you. I know you bought this years ago, but we want to make sure you guys get these updates too. That to me is unheard of in the industry.
Yeah, even our cheapest ECU, our Elite 550, is a single 34-pin connector. It's $822 on the website. It does transmission control. But like all of them, that we consider that a basic function. It's not considered a race function or anything like that. So every ECU in our lineup, all of the Elites as well as the R5, all of them, even the sub $1,000 unit will control an A340 or a 4L60, 4L80. Or anything you want to wire it to. It'll control up to 8 gears independently. So if it's an analog shifted transmission up to 8 speeds, you're good. So going into the lineup of ECUs, I'll kind of start at the bottom. You'll kind of understand as the numbers get bigger, the ECUs get fancier and more expensive. Pretty easy to understand, but it's also kind of confusing due to how the numbers are oriented. So I'll start with 4-cylinder ECUs. We have the Elite 550. It's a single 34-pin connector ECU. It has 4 ignition and 4 injection. Pretty straightforward. It has enough I/O to run a basic motor and have a couple things left over. The jump up from that is going to be the Elite 1000. It is a dual connector ECU, so it's a 60-pin ECU. It has a 34-pin and a 26-pin. Think of it as a Elite 550 with more inputs and outputs or more I/O. It doesn't have a lot of advanced race features. It doesn't do like 4D tuning and, closed loop boost control for CO2. It does closed loop for regular. And then the next jump up from that is the Elite 1500. It's kind of like the top of the line 4-cylinder ECU. It does every feature that we offer. Run a 4-cylinder fully sequentially, kind of whole 9 yards. And then we have that same structure for, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder stuff. We have an Elite 750. Which is a single connector. It'll do 6 ignition and 6 injection. So we actually have a lot of people that put these on 2Js and RBs that just need something to run a car that's nice and cheap. That ECU is like $1,200. And again, it'll run, everything engine related, boost control, idle, all that fun stuff. The next jump up from that is the Elite 2000, which is basically just like the Elite 1000, but it will do 8 cylinders. Fully sequentially, so 8 ignition, 8 injection. And then the next one on top of that is the Elite 2500. And the 2500 is basically just like the 1500, but again, it does 8 ignition, 8 injection instead of 4 and 4. The 1500 and the 2500 are kind of the top of the line ECUs for both categories, 4-cylinder and 8-cylinder. They have all your race functions. Your race timer is built into that. It'll do trans brake, bump, and creep built into that. Closed loop CO2, advanced flat shift, drive-by-wire, all of that fun stuff is built into those ECUs kind of from the get-go. And then the most current ECU out is the one that Ryan's running. It's a Nexus R5. We don't really call it an ECU anymore because it does way more than that. We call it a VCU, so a vehicle control unit, which Ryan mentioned earlier. It is an ECU. It is a PDM. It is a dual wideband controller built-in Wi-Fi, built-in 6-axis G meter, all of this stuff in kind of one box, as well as some of the best data logging you can get without having to pay for it. It'll do 500 channels. 300 of those channels can be at 1 millisecond sample rates. Some other companies charge bukus of money for that level of data logging or that pro level of data logging, but that's just built into that box from the get-go. It's a 5 connector, hence the R5 name. But yeah, it's kind of the flagship. It does just about anything you'd want an ECU to do. And it's incredible. The Wi-Fi sounds like a silly thing, but everybody loves it. It's the craziest thing. I can have a car in the shop here, and I can be at my cushy, nice desk, and I can have the car turned on at my desk with my 3 screens, making changes, doing whatever I want to do because I'm just connected via Wi-Fi to the thing out in the shop. It is awesome. It's a game changer to have something as simple as that built into an ECU, as well as everything else that it's capable of.
I want to stop right there again because I want people to understand, again, from end user standpoint, how much that's used. I use it a lot. Again, perfect example is that, you know, I'm fortunate to have a garage, but imagine you're not the guy with the garage, right? Maybe your car sits outside and you want to make modifications, you want to play with it, right? Well, I live here in the Northeast, or maybe you live somewhere colder than me, right? You're in Maine somewhere. I'm in Pennsylvania. I don't want to sit outside. All you got to do is say, key the car on, right? And connect to it via Wi-Fi. And I can sit inside my office now and make changes. The thing I do all the time is I actually hook up a battery tender to it, key the car on, and I can leave it on for hours on end, and I can make changes whenever I feel like it. And I mean, that to me is a game changer. I hate sitting out there crouched. My other thing is too, I'm sitting there with the laptop connected into it, crouched over the seat like this, trying to work versus sitting at my desk making changes, looking at, I got multiple screens set up. It just makes it so much easier. Again, I'm all about ease of use, and that is a huge thing, along with the USB-C part of it, which I'll let you talk about, you know, being able to power it up and do everything and make changes without actually having hooked to a car, which is amazing. So I'll let you kind of talk on that too.
So what he's talking about is that it uses a USB-C, which, like most newer phones, super common cable, really easy to get, nothing special about it. So if you lose one or need to pick up a spare one, like I use one as a phone charger when I go to the track. And I also use it to connect to laptops, to the ECUs when I need to. But the cool thing about it is, say you buy your ECU and you want to play with it or load a map to it or whatever you want to do on a bench right here on this table. The computer will power the R5 via the USB-C cable. It doesn't power up the ECU fully. So when you're connected to it, there's a little light up at the top of your software. And it's either red when you're not connected, yellow when you're connected via USB-C, or green when the ECU is powered on through the traditional wiring. But that just gives you the ability to, you know, if you want to make changes to someone's map, but you don't want the car to be on, say it's a race car, it has no alternator, it's on a 16-volt system, and you forgot your charger. You don't want to power this whole car on to go through the map and review data and make changes, which sometimes can be a quick 30-second thing, or maybe it's a 5 or 10-minute thing. Well, maybe you don't have a charger, so you can't let the car sit on for 5 or 10 minutes at the track while you're trying to look through data, make changes, whatever you want to do. Well, now I can just plug in, the laptop powers the ECU, the rest of the car is off, but I'm still live connected to the ECU, making changes, whatever I want to do, without the whole rest of the car needing to be on for me to do that. So that's pretty nice.
There's so many features here, guys. So this is going to be, we're really going to dive into the Nexus R5 here. This is really the big thing for me, just because no one else offers this. And I mean no one. You could try looking out there. There's a PDM separate for someone else. There is another great ECU out there. No one offers an all-in-one box that does all this, period. There's no one else that does this. And it allows you so many capabilities by having power and ground directly to your ECU. It eliminates so many things and makes items so much easier to simplify, because you're able to ground internally. You get power directly from it. Like I said, it just changes so much. I really had to change my mind about when I connect to the ECU, what it could do, reassigning inputs and outputs. All the features are crazy. So let's start maybe with the e-gates, and then we'll go into the inputs and outputs and reassignment of that.
All right. So e-gates are a big thing that we've had a lot of people ask about lately. And pretty much all the other manufacturers out there, you have to use some sort of control module to drive the gates, mostly because the gates have a super high amperage whenever you're trying to shut them or open them fully, stuff like that. And most boxes won't drive those directly. They don't have the ability to send out 8 or 10 amps on, you know, a half bridge or a full bridge like those gates need. Well, the Nexus has 4 half bridges, so it can drive, you know, 2 e-gates completely separately from the box. You don't have to buy any other modules. You don't have to, have any kind of extra integration needed to drive these things. And that makes it really easy. You literally take your wires from your R5 and you run them directly to your e-gate. They don't stop. They don't pass go. They don't collect $200. The wiring on this, people don't understand. Until you've wired one of these things, it will change the way you look at wiring. You want to do headlights, that's fine. We have a headlight function. We have a high beam function. We have a flash to patch function for you road race guys. You literally take a wire from the R5 and you run it directly to your headlight. You ground the headlight at the body, as long as the body has good grounding, or you can build a ground harness from that thing that you're powering, and you're done. That's it. There's no having to have the battery in the back of the car and your fuse and relay panel in the front of the car and your switches in the interior. Well, now you have a spaghetti of wires. Now we have, okay, well, the battery's in the back. We have to run a power wire from the battery to the fuse and relay board. We have to run switch power from the ignition switch to the fuse and relay board. We have to run our ground trigger from the ECU to the fuse and relay board. Then we have to run the power output from the relay to the device. Like, that's a huge amount of wire that no longer has to be in the car. We have people wiring these things in for a full drag car that pull 40 or 50 pounds of wire and relay boards and switch panels and all this stuff out of these cars. And that's huge. And then the simplicity of it, trying to diagnose something, it's so much easier. And then obviously most PDMs, you have programmable fuse limits. So you can go in and say, well, this is a 20 amp fuse or this is a 10 amp fuse. And you can even have soft starts. All of them are pulse width modulated. So they're not just off or on. So if you wanted to power, like a fuel pump and run it at 50%, or a fan and run it at 10% and ramp it up to 100%, whatever you want to do, nitrous solenoids, fully progressive, all from this box. You don't have to have a fuse. You don't have to have a relay. All this stuff is controlled in the ECU itself. And it is insane how easy it is. We've had people do full cars, headlights, tail lights, turn signals, reverse lights, brake lights. They power their fuel pumps. They power their fans. They do their coils, their injectors, all of this stuff from the R5 directly. It blows my mind how easy it is. I built a display that we took to PRI, and one of the marketing guys was like, hey, do you think we could put like RGBs under this thing? And I was like, you know what, give me a couple minutes, we're gonna see if we can figure it out. And 30 minutes later, I built a map with using generics. So a lot of ECUs have generics, but they're limited on what they can and can't do. I literally have a display sitting out the shop that has RGBs under it. I'm using the R5 to power the RGBs. I'm using ground triggers from the R5 to trigger the R, the G, and the B. And then I built custom tables where I can make it go through, light shows and flashing and all this different stuff. And people are like, oh, that's really cool, but like, why would you use that? Think of it this way. Some of the drift guys, we do this on their cars. We do underglow. And so the underglow, since the ECU is controlling it, I can base it off of the limiter or base it off of RPM. So I can have the lights under the car get brighter as the car revs up, and even pop and flash and whatever I want with the limiter state, which sounds really dumb, but in drifting, it's all about show, and the guys love it. It's just infinite amounts of whatever you want to do. Having a PDM built in and not having to worry about a separate box or connecting stuff over CAN or anything is just, it's groundbreaking. And then one thing that I hadn't mentioned yet is something that nobody else on the market has. So every other PDM is CAN based, which CAN's awesome. But in the big scheme of things, CAN is actually really slow. Sometimes sample rates can be 50 hertz or so. And that's awesome, but some stuff you want to view faster than that. So say I'm powering my coils from my R5, okay, which is 100% something you can do. So say you have a misfire in your drag car going down track, and we're, again, powering the coils from the R5. Well, since it's a direct connection, the PDM board and the ECU board are connected directly if it's not over CAN. I can log every single PDM channel at 1,000 hertz if I want to. That's 1,000 times a second, 1 millisecond sample rates. I can do that enough where I can zoom in on the draw off of that PDM output that I'm using to power the coil, and I can say, okay, the firing order is 1, 2, 3, 4. I can look in and say, okay, coil 1 drew 8 amps and then fired. And then coil 2 drew 8 amps and then fired. Coil 3 drew 2 amps and then fired. I can say, well, that coil's on its way out the door. It hasn't failed yet, but under load, it's not charging as much as it normally would, or maybe it's overcharging. But I can see all that stuff in a data log now. I don't have to guess and check and start moving coils around and seeing if the misfire follows the coil or stays with the cylinder, or any of that stuff. So just something like that, something that seems so silly, being able to log those PDM channels at that rate kind of opens up the world on what you can and can't do with an ECU now. And because no one's been able to do that, because every other PDM on the market is CAN based, and they simply don't have the sample rates that a direct connection does.
And that, there's so much information. I hope everyone got to take that in. And something I want to put with this is just little things too. So from a super guy, when we're talking about inputs and outputs, from a super guy standpoint, I am controlling the speed of the car using the VCU. I'm using the R5, so I don't have a Dakota digital box. I'm not using a Bluetooth module. I'm using the box, using one wire, outputting to the dash, saying, hey, I think it's a pulse width, right? Is that how we're doing it there, Nick? I think it's a pulsing we're doing there.
We did a frequency, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Because we just used a generic output and then set it up as a frequency and sent the frequency to the factory speedo.
Yep. And the way I did it then was, get the car to say 40 miles an hour, used a GPS. I'd say, hey, I'm going 40 miles an hour right now. I kept hitting up on that button to it match with the dash, checked it at 80. It showed 80 exactly with GPS, and above 80, it doesn't really matter anyways. 80 is where I need to be the most accurate. I've never had to check that because, I would never go any faster than that, Nick. I'm a good, safe driver. But that's just neat in the fact that I can do that. That just eliminated a $300 Dakota digital box by having this. So what I'm trying to say is, because I know it's going to be brought up, the VCU, the R5, it's not cheap. It's not. But when you realize that it comes with the software, it is a PDM, it is a trans controller, it is an ECU, it is my gauge outputs, it is my fuse box, it is my entire car. It is the brain, it's the heart, it's everything. It does it all in one. Then when you start adding it all up, you're going, maybe this isn't so bad. Again, it's all relative what you want. Does everyone need that box? No. But if you're me and you like to tinker and you want to try and do it all, it'll do it all. And again, guys, I'll be doing something neat by eliminating the fuse box coming up. I know that you had someone who had done it once already, and I want to try it myself. I just think that's very cool. Like you said, it could do windshield wipers, it could do headlights, it could do all these things. Now, within reason, right? Some of these things, it's adding almost more headache if the way I look at it, the car already had it. So, but me, I can never do anything easy, right? So that's just some cool stuff to talk about there. But I also want to talk about reassigning these inputs and outputs. So we kind of talked on it there, but like if I want what's something we did with this? Rolling anti-lag, I think. We changed some of the outputs. Like I had, this can do up to 16 injectors, right? Well, I've got injector inputs and outputs are just sitting there. Any other ECU, they would sit there.
Hold on. It'll do 18 injectors.
Oh, I'm sorry.
18.
18.
The reason it's 18, the reason it's 18 is so you can do a Pro Mod V8. You can do dual stages, so 2 stages of injection on a V8. You still have 2 left over. So if you're running methanol or whatnot, you don't want to run an intercooler, you can use those 2 extra ones to spray fuel into the pipe in between the turbo and the intake manifold. So 18 fully sequential. So if you have a Supra like Ryan and you want to do 3 stages of fully sequential injection, go to town. You can.
That's crazy. But if you're like me and only use 6 injectors, 6 ignition coils, that leaves the rest of that all open, right? That leaves 12 open then? Does that mean that's dead in the box? No. So I can use all that for other items, correct?
Yep, all that stuff is reassignable, so you can go in and any injector or ignition output that's not being used for injection or ignition can be reassigned to a traditional digital pulse output. And this is something cool that a lot of people don't know about or don't use with the R5. They can also be used as switched inputs. So every pin on the R5, the ECU can tell you the voltage on that pin at any given time. The sampling threshold is not enough to do, like a boost sensor or oil pressure, fuel pressure, stuff like that. But like a clutch switch or a rolling anti-lag switch or maybe a trans brake bumper creep button, you can actually use an output for those. So you're not limited to just the inputs on the ECU. An output can be used as a switched input. And this goes for leftover ignition, leftover injection. You can also use them as outputs to, trigger a relay or whatnot, if you want to as well. And they're all pulse width modulated too. But it's pretty cool that you have that flexibility of you don't have to burn up all of your AVIs, your analog voltage inputs, for switches and stuff anymore like you used to.
See, that to me is just cool. Again, there's so much this box can do. It's very, very neat. Again, and also we have the integrated widebands, and it's not just one, right? We've got dual banks. So if you've got a V8, you have both banks right there, or you have a V10 of some sort, or anything that has dual banks. This is nice because you have dual widebands built in. You don't need an external box now to say like, hey, well, it has. There's another box out there to have one wideband built in. This has dual widebands built in. I think that's really neat.
And it's not just a single style of wideband too. It'll do the Bosch LSU 4.9, which is a super common wideband that a lot of people use. But a lot of the drag race guys have started to realize, methanol and certain fuels are really hard on widebands. So the NTK is a really common wideband that a lot of people use nowadays. The R5 will work with both of those. So whenever you assign your wideband, you wire it in, there's basically just a drop down. You tell it, hey, I'm using a Bosch sensor, or hey, I'm using an NTK sensor. So it will run both of those sensors directly, no extra modules, no anything. So say your car starts as a street car and you're using a LSU 4.9 and it turns into a race car and you want to move over to an NTK, cool, go to town. Literally wire it in, go on the ECU, change that drop down, you're done. That easy.
I love that. That again, because I'm actually using the NTK sensor now on my car, and it's nice to have that. And I'm no race car by any stretch, but it's cool that it has that ability to use all these different sensors. Something I actually want to bring up, and it's something it's nice. If I had the flying lead, I don't, but that's something you guys sell. You guys sell the flying lead that has how many total inputs and outputs, or how many total pins are on the ECU for the R5?
So on the R5, it has 124 pins. So it has two 34-pin connectors, two 26-pin connectors, and it has one DTP for the 25 amp high current pins. So 124 pins on the ECU. And what he's getting at is on our flying lead harness, every single wire is a different color. So if you're looking at a wire and it's, pink with a red trace, that can only be one thing. And you can either A, look at the documentation that comes with the R5, or go into the R5 itself, and you can actually go to what we call an IO report, and that'll list everything that's wired to the ECU that you've set up and programmed, as well as all of your available open inputs and outputs. And it will tell you the wire color, the pin, the function of that pin, the voltage, if the ECU is powered on, that's on that wire currently, whole 9 yards. And you can actually print that out. So like when I wire cars, I will go in the ECU first. I'll assign everything to what I want to put it to, and the ECU will tell you if that's not allowed. It'll give you like a red exclamation mark and say like, hey, you can't do this, or like a yellow warning that says, hey, you've already assigned that to something else, or this is something to look into. We don't recommend you do this, but it's still possible. So you can wire everything in the computer, and then once the computer says, hey, everything's good, I accept all of this wiring, there's no conflicts, there's no issues, you can literally just click print, and now I have a full sheet of paper that tells me the pin on the ECU, the function of that pin, the wire color, and what I've assigned it to in the computer. And then I just go down that list and check them off as I wire. So a lot of people think that's backwards, but that way there's no, oh, I wired this thing wrong. I chose this input when it was actually supposed to be an output, or whatever it was. And a lot of those wire colors, we custom made them. Trying to find 124 different wire colors is really hard. We have light or lime green with traces. We have pink with traces. We have light blue with traces. Those are colors you physically won't find places. We had them made to make your life easier when you wire these things. Because 124 wires can be very daunting. And just knowing that, hey, every wire has its own color, or every function has its own color assigned to it, kind of makes life a little easier, a little bit, better for the customer when they start thinking about, hey, man, this is a lot of stuff I'm going to have to wire in.
Well, the thing I look at is diagnosing if you do have an issue, right? Or you think you have an issue. I'm like, what was this again? Well, I've got, prime example is mine. My harness is great and all, but I've got multiple wires of the same color. I'll be looking at something like, okay, this is blue and red, but also these three are also blue and red. Crap, which blue and red? Let me check this again versus, hey, I know the wire I'm looking for. Let me look. Yep, it's green and purple. All right, green and purple wire. There it is. Let's go out in the engine bay now, find the green and purple wire. Yep, found it. So do continuity test. All right, the wire's good. So I have something else going on. I like that from a visual standpoint. It just makes life easier. I just think that's really, really nice to have. I've got to ask though, and I'm just going to bring this up because we've talked to this before. Is there ever going to be the possibility of assigning colors ourselves in the ECU? I know right now it's not something, but is that ever something you guys think you'll do, or is that just something you want to stay away from at this time?
So we've been asked that a couple times and we've talked about it. I don't ever see it happening, just for the reason that you'd end up getting somebody changing colors around and they'd be looking for one color because their ECU says it's a pink and blue wire and they're looking for a pink and blue, but somebody changed it and it's actually a blue and green wire or something different. Really the big benefit of that is when you use our harnesses. And past that, a lot of guys that wire stuff, I know guys that wire that literally just use white for everything. It's cheaper for them to buy, one or two or three different colors instead of having 50 or 60 or 124 colors. So even then, if you had a guy that, used white for all of his analog voltage inputs and blue for all of his DPOs or whatever they chose, that's not going to help you because you're in the ECU and you're like, oh, it's a white wire. Well, I have 50 other white wires, which white wire is it? So unless you had the ability to have 124 different colors, there's really no reason for you to be able to reassign them, because you'd end up with duplicates of the same color anyway, and then you kind of moot point at that.
We'll talk about the G meter, and then after we're done, is there anything else we want to talk about besides the G meter here? Is there anything else we want to bring? We got the gates, inputs and outputs, wide bands, color wiring I wanted to talk about, Wi-Fi we went over, USB-C. Is there anything else you want to add to it? Because then we'll go to the IC7 dash and then the new PDM coming out. And you guys haven't talked about the new R3 yet, so we can't mention that. Is there anything else you want to talk about with the R5 before we go to the dash and the keypads?
I think that covers most of it. We'll go over the 6-axis G meter, which I think is pretty cool. There are some other ECUs on the market that do a 3-axis, which is great. So it'll do your G as far as like longitude, latitude, and then vertical up and down. But ours is actually a 6-axis. So it does those three, which is great. But it also do pitch, so how the car is tilted front or back. It will do yaw, drifting side to side. And then it also does roll, so how the car is tilted. And all of that data is really important for a lot of like the road race guys. So even in drag racing, they'll use the G, which is nice. You can also use the pitch for like wheelie control without having to buy one of those big expensive like laser ride height sensors. Those are super nice, but if you don't want to shell out $900 for one of those, you can actually use the pitch because that will tell you if the car is lifting up. And so you can kind of use that as part of your wheelie control strategy if you want to. So being able to have that data is just one extra little bit of safety. It's just something there. And again, it's free. It's built in, 6-axis G meter. You're not paying any extra for it. It's not a thing you have to buy. It's not an add-on. It's already in the box. And a lot of people think, oh, well, now I have to mount the box straight up and down, or it has to be perfectly flat, or all this stuff. No, mount it any way you want. And then it has a simple click calibrate. It'll say, hey, is the car on flat ground? You'll click yes, because you calibrated on flat ground. And then it'll say, okay, jack the front of the car up a little bit. I usually do until the wheels come off the ground, and then hit calibrate again so it knows direction. It knows, hey, that's the front of the car. I saw it lift up. Again, free, built in. You can base any table in the ECU off of this information. So if you wanted to use that for some sort of traction control, if you wanted to use it for safeties, like, hey, if the car, the yaw, the car drifting, or the roll starts to do something, we could say, okay, it's a drag car and the yaw starts to get crazy, so the car's sliding sideways. Hey, go ahead and pull the chutes. If the R5 is in control of the chutes, you can have it do that. So that's one less thing the driver has to, worry about or think about. Or if the car rolls over, we can say, hey, if the car rolls over, turn the car off. Just a simple little safety thing, but it's all there and it's all accessible by you to do whatever you want with it. You can use it, or you can be like Ryan and not use it. It doesn't matter. It's up to you, but it's there if you want it, which is nice.
That's a really cool feature, actually, because watching these guys, so I want to make sure it's clear here too, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're drag racing, right, I've seen these fancy sensors the guys put in the front, I think it was Ryan Sametz I actually watched at FL2K there a couple years back, where he wheelied so hard, came down, and actually snapped his block in half. So he had eventually put a sensor on the front to keep his car from wheeling. Once it got past a certain threshold, the car said, hey, bring it back down. So you're saying without adding that sensor, you guys can set up inside the ECU to say, hey, I can tell that the pitch is slightly off now, bring the car back down, take some power ignition out of it, and keep it going straight. Is that true? Or please correct me if I'm wrong here.
Nope, 100% correct. So the channel is going to be pitch of the car, and then the channel is in a percent per second, which is actually really nice. So the percent per second, we can see the angle of percent, how much the angle is coming up in a per second value. So if that number is nice and low, the car may be coming up a little bit, but it's not coming up a lot. So we can say, okay, we'll do a moderate, pull some timing. We don't need to cut cylinders yet, whatever you want to do. Or if the car is coming up fast, the percent per second is going to be a larger value. So then we can say, okay, this thing is really trying to power wheelie. It's not just a gradual kind of coming up. It's hard coming up. And we can actually cut cylinders or whatever we want to do because of that. So yeah, 100%. You can use that to stop a wheelie. Having a laser rod height is really nice because it gives you the exact height of what's going on. But those sensors, again, are really expensive, and they, are there a laser that shoots down to the ground, and they got to be mounted on the bottom side of the car. So rocks and all this stuff, they live in a hard environment. So even if you had to replace it every couple of years, they're like $900. They're a lot of money. And the fact that you don't necessarily have to have that to do wheelie control is kind of a nice thing. Saves you a little bit of money. You can put that towards buying me tacos or whatever you want to do.
Them tacos. I got to get you them tacos. So that really goes over.
Trying to plug it in there, man.
That's right. That really goes over the R5 today. Nick, is there anything else you want to kind of put in there with that? Or let's kind of maybe move over to the IC7 or talk about something else here. I really want to talk about the dash, make sure we get that in here, and also talk about that new PDM that's coming out.
Yeah, we can do that. So the dash is the IC7. It's a 7-inch screen that we have that works off of our Haltech CAN protocol. So literally 4 wires, you plug it into the ECU, and all of the data that's in the ECU is able to be displayed on the dash, which is nice. There's multiple screens. You can customize colors, images, stuff like that, kind of make it where it matches what you want your car to be. The other cool thing about that is it can be used fully standalone without having an ECU at all. So we actually have a guy that works here that has an old Jeep, carbureted, he has an IC7 in his Jeep. We sell it with a little flying lead harness that comes with a couple temp sensors and pressure sensors, and he has that on his Jeep. He can see oil pressure, coolant temp, RPM, speed, all that stuff on our display without having to have an ECU. Also, for carbureted guys, all of our other CAN products work with that IC7. So if you have one of our widebands, it will integrate to the IC7. If you have one of our EGT modules for exhaust gas temperature, it'll integrate to the IC7. If you have our TPMS kit that shows tire pressure and temperature, it'll integrate to the IC7. You do not have to have an ECU for any of this. They all go to the IC7, and it will show you all of that data. So basically, really old car, and give it a little bit of a modern feel without having to get rid of the carburetor and kind of take away from what the car was, but still be able to view and monitor all of this data if you want to. Pretty nice dash. I really like it. I don't have one in my personal car yet, but I will probably end up buying one this year to put in my personal car. So
I've always really liked the dash. I think it's cool. I like the configurability of it. And, that's a separate software, guys, you can download off of the website. It's very easy to use. The one thing I've asked this, and I know what you're saying too, because you can get a keypad for this. I would love to be able to make switches and changes from it, but I understand that the keypad is what you guys have always designed, and I've heard other people say the same thing. Just get a keypad. That keypad makes it easier. It's right there. Configure that to make any changes, boost changes, traction control, rolling anti-lag. You want to line lock, all that good stuff. Would use the keypad in that instance then. And for
the reason,
good.
The reason, we've had a lot of people ask about being able to make changes from the dash. The reason that we kind of prefer the keypad is we do a lot of race cars, and a lot of the race cars, the driver physically can't reach.
Hold on one second. You're breaking up really bad. Hold on one second here.
So even if he's physically nice and close, he can get his hands up and make changes and see all those changes on the dash if he wants to. But he doesn't have to mount the dash so close that he can be able to reach it. He can put it, maybe in the factory position. If he has like a carbon dash, he doesn't have to mount it, right behind the steering wheel, where it's a little too close and looks a little bit out of place. He can actually put it in the regular spot and still be able to make changes without having to have super long arms and be able to reach it. So sure. The keypads make that really easy. I really like the keypads for that ability. And something that's coming out is you'll be able to use multiple keypads. So not just a single 8 button or a single 15 button. You could have twin 15 button or twin 8 button or whatever kind of pairing you want to have now, which makes it a little bit nicer. So you could have a keypad in the front of the car and a keypad in the back of the car. Or a lot of the drag guys will have a keypad by the driver and a keypad on the passenger side for the guy that lines you up. And maybe that keypad controls your target boost or your launch RPM or your traction control strategy or your torque management, or he's feeling the track. He's able to tell you how sticky it is, how it feels because he's walking on it, So he can make those changes for you. So having the ability to do multiple is really nice.
And see, that is nice. And I know me again, streetcar guy, I just don't want to put one in. I can obviously hide it, but I've been staying away from it. I do think they're really neat. They do look cool too, but staying away for now. But it's cool to see that, and it makes a lot more sense. Again, especially if you're racing or doing anything, you have gloves on. Using a touchscreen isn't exactly ideal either, where you could just have a button, hit it, and go. Now, that kind of covers that stuff, which is, unless there's something else you want to add, but the next big part, I really want to talk about this new PDM. I just think PDMs are cool, and the fact that you guys are now offering a standalone PDM that's coming out, I kind of want to talk on that here too, if you want to dive into that a little bit.
So yeah, we do. We have something called the PD16 that should be released in the next couple weeks. And it will be a standalone PDM that you can pair to your Elite or R5 ECU. So a lot of people that don't have race cars, that have like a full street car, and they want to run everything in the car off the PDM. And I'm talking not just headlights and tail lights and the regular stuff, but like radio, wipers, power windows, blower motor, all this stuff. And they're like, well, I'm going to run out of inputs and outputs on the PDM side of things with the R5, which you will. Now we will have up to 4 PD16s. So you could pair 4 of these PD16s together. And they have 16 PDM outputs. They have 10 traditional 8 amp, they have 2 half bridge, and then they have 4 25 amp high current. So you could put those one on each corner of the car if you wanted to, or however you want to mix and match them. If you need additional PDM outputs and you ran out of the ones on your R5, or you have an Elite and you don't have any PDM outputs, but you want to, now you can just buy this guy. It'll connect via CAN. It uses the same NSP software, some changes, and then plug into the PDM and make other changes. And hope that they talk to each other and make sure everything's happy. You plug into the ECU, you plug the PDM into the ECU, you turn it on, and you say, hey, I want that PDM output to be for thermo fan, or I want that PDM output to be for fuel pump. It takes literally 15 seconds to assign a PDM output to something. Where in some other softwares where they're separate, you have to go in one and say, well, I want this channel or this CAN message to go to my PDM to tell it I want the fuel pump to turn on when it sees this. And you have to go into the PDM and say, well, on this channel, that's going to be from the ECU, that's your fuel pump signal. And then, well, now I want you to, when you see that, I want you to turn on this output to this device. And so you have to link it all together, and it ends up being kind of time consuming, not very hard, but time consuming. The Haltech doesn't do it that way. One software, you connect in the software, you go to your function, you click edit connection, find your PDM, select your PDM output that you want to use, hit OK, and then set up your fuse limits, and you're done. That easy. So super nice. There will be, again, like I said, up to 4. So if you wanted to get crazy, you could have the R5 and 4 PDMs. I don't know why you'd ever need that many, but if you wanted to, go to town. It's there for you.
And see, that's really cool. I mean, now for myself, older vehicle, the R5 really does a lot. The way I look at it is for someone that needs some of the high current outputs. So, we have 425 high outputs that we can use from the Nexus R5. But now if I'm keeping that up front, trying to run long wire back to say run a fuel pump, the longer that run is, the more the amperage drops, right? There's more draw there. So by having, say, the PDM in the back now, if I wanted to, which throw this out there, I want to run my taillights off of it, I want to use my fuel pumps for it, I want to do everything in the back there, right? And handle all those things. It could do so. That is nice in that fact. I just think it's cool that there's another box and it's integrated into the system itself for the software. So I don't have to use multiple softwares out there. I think that's pretty cool. All right. Is there anything else you want to bring up here, or we'll do a finish up and conclusion here?
I think we're about there. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here next is kind of say, like, where do you see the business going? And we'll kind of finish up here. Where do you see, like, I'll just say it now. So Nick, where do you see Haltech going? Where's the future of Haltech headed to? What is on your guys' viewfinders here? What are you guys trying to do here? What are they doing for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? What are your guys' goals?
Honestly, man, we have a motto around here, kind of a saying, we're just trying to be the most loved ECU company, which sounds really weird, I guess, when you say it, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of truth to it. We want people to be happy that they're using our products. We want people to enjoy using our products. We want to come out with products that make sense, that are easy to use, that don't take someone who's an engineer to figure it out. We want to make stuff that people will want to use, that they want to, be excited about, I guess. As for what we're doing, obviously we still come out with new products. We're still engineering stuff. We're still designing new things and coming out with stuff that will hopefully make this industry better. Can't really talk about a lot of that stuff. A lot of it's under lock and key, but we're doing the best we can to try to make this the best engine management company in the world. That's really kind of what we're going for.
I'm a huge believer in the product, man. I really like seeing where you guys are going. The customer service is there. Working with you guys now and just being around y'all. You're just positive people. I love the product. Love what you guys are doing. Nick, the last thing I'm going to say here is, have everyone check out the website. If you guys need to, call in. If you guys have questions, that's what I tell everyone all the time. They're like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I want to make sure it's clear here, and I know you feel this way. If you have questions, you're not sure, call in. That's what these guys are here for. They're paid to be there and give you support. If you're not sure if you're going to buy the box and you have some questions like, hey, is it going to do X, Y, Z? I want it to do this. Call in and find out. Don't be afraid to make that phone call or send an email to find, like, hey, I've got X, Y, Z car and I want to be able to do this with it. Is that possible? Someone like Nick or, the multitude of people that work there will get back with you and try and answer your question to the best of their ability. And that's what I want to make sure before we get off here today, that the support is there. It's a quality product and it's just all inclusive, all in one. And yeah, that's pretty much what I want to get at here today. So again, Nick, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries at all, man. It was good talking to you. And like I said, whenever you get around to messing with your Supra, I'm pretty sure I know I'll hear from you. So
of course. Hey, have a great day, man.
Later, buddy. Bye.